problems facing New Zealand's primary sector have been mounting at a rapid pace. So I think it's time for open hearts and open minds. Welcome to Sarah's Country for another show of celebrating success, innovation, perseverance and support in the community that surrounds farming and growing food and fibre here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We like to acknowledge the matters that matter most to you, our audience, and daily we are listening to the challenges that are constantly evolving. If you're new to Sarah's Country as a viewer or a listener, kia ora and welcome. I'm your host, Sarah Perriam, as passionate as you are about our future to be the world's finest producer of food and fibre, ethically, sustainably, and of course profitably. Broadcasting live Monday through Wednesday live from 7 o'clock in alliance with the tremendously hardworking and passionate team at Global HQ. Behind the brands that you know, love and trust, Farmers Weekly, Dairy Farmer, Agri HQ and On Farm Story. We bring you the latest tonight from this week's rural newspaper and of course breaking online at farmersweekly.co.nz to the screens and to your ears. This show goes live for a reason, to have your interaction, your say to our guests, whatever you are watching live on, 15 different platforms we are streaming to. Add a comment wherever you're watching underneath, a question it might be to our guests, and I will do my best to get to them throughout the show. Otherwise, we'd simply just record a podcast, wouldn't we, during the day? So get amongst. Of course, some action is always driven by a simple question. It's not Marmite or Vegemite. It's always a good one on Talkback. But this is easy, really easy. What is the best fruit New Zealand produces? I grew up in Central Otago, so I'm a little bit biased. Stone fruit, of course. We produce the very best apricots, nectarines, peaches, and of course, cherries. Something I didn't really deeply appreciate as a delicacy until I lived in Auckland for a few years back. I met people who'd never tried a cherry before. Could you believe it? Well, I couldn't. I actually gorged myself picking and packing them in my school holiday job when I was 14. I want to share your favourite New Zealand fruit. Of course, we have an international audience here on Sarah's Country, so let's use it as an opportunity to promote it as well, wherever you are watching in the comments below. Share the variety too. Is it Dawson's cherries or Black Boy peaches or jazz apples? I'd love to know. My mum's a big fan on heirloom varieties, some that we have been able to maintain and others that we're struggling to hold on to. I'd love to hear yours, and I'd love to hear yours, Joel. Sure. What's your go-to? 5+ a day? Healthy intake of fruit? Your mother's watching again. Yeah. She wants to know.
I quite like a good apple. I find Smittens are quite good here. I don't know if they're grown here or not, or I don't know if you grow apples here.
What's a Smitten? Is it like a Granny Smith? No.
No, it's just a variety of apple that, I don't know, it's got a good crunch to it.
Did you know one of our biggest success stories is the rocket apples, Joel? Made tiny so you can put in school lunch boxes.
Uh-huh.
So they're just little bite size. They've bred them that way. New Zealand apple and pears is incredible success story, as well as, of course, zestberry, and we'll get later on to that in the show. Imported fruit and vegetables is becoming super expensive. Joel, the other night, actually, while you're there, did you realise that courgettes in New Zealand are more expensive at the moment than steak per kilo?
Really?
Really.
Oh, okay.
And that's COVID's fault.
Oh, is it because are they importing them? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, we've absolutely lost our connection to seasonality in this country. And I'm excited about that reconnection because it is the most environmentally friendly way to consume. Did you know that? If we eat seasonally, we can actually save the planet, because I heard that food wastage, if it was a country, it would be the third largest emitter of carbon in the world. We will have more on that soon to see how our horticultural exports are tracking, especially with labour shortages and, of course, Auckland in lockdown. Remember, a majority of our vegetables are grown right on that boundary of lockdown, pukekohe. Also, I would like if we can reassess how much do we care about Auckland and rural New Zealand. Yeah, I know, we need to talk about it. Do you think we're still living in the dark ages about how important our major city is? I mean, it's very easy, and I hear it all the time, to say, why on earth would you live there? Well, especially that's easy to say in the parts of paradise around this country that you live in, but it is home to 1.5 million Kiwis and a major part of our economy. It's very significant at the moment as they're experiencing a few more weeks of level 3 lockdown. So I remember being at an event and I said, you sit there and you say, why don't they care about us? And I said to a room of 100 farmers, put your hand up if you've stayed in Auckland more than 3 consecutive nights in the last 2 years. I tell you what, there was about 4 hands. So let's reassess how much we care, and it's important tonight that we do that. Have you visited there lately? Did you live there or living there now watching Sarah's Country? I'd love to know what is some of your favourite places about Auckland. I'm going to admit, before I lived there, I was very sheltered South Island girl and did not appreciate the natural beauty, parks, beaches, and my favourite place when I was there, I used to escape to Cornwall Park, and Pete, the manager, took me under his wing, and I used to enjoy going and checking up on how he was getting on with his lambing beat. If you can just share simply in the comments below, hashtag Kia kaha. Of course, we want to send our strength to our urban cousins right now, because you know what? It could be you anytime. Leading me into that is, of course, our guest for our show after 7:20. We're going to learn about how a group of rural people have done just that, stepping up to show that rural New Zealand care for everyone in New Zealand, our team of 5 million. And they are teaching us how we can spread our aroha, our love, via a Kia Kaha Auckland Facebook page. NZX dairy analyst by day, Julia Jones, and the wearer of very many hats, is always a hoot on Sarah's Country. And of course, I used the opportunity to have a yarn to her tonight about it, as I said, after 7:20, about why she's throwing her support behind this initiative. Export returns have doubled over the past decade, but with terrifying air freight costs, worker shortages and COVID restrictions on greengrocers, horticulture's golden shine could go to waste. After 7:30, Global HQ journalist Richard Rennie is going to join us to bring some light on all of the positive that are coming out of this booming part of our sector, and in particular, Zespri's record year results out today. To close the show, his idea to create a mobile milking platform came as much from looking over the horizon of his farm's future as it did from present-day practicalities. Winners of the recent B.linc Innovation Awards held in conjunction with Global HQ, Ian Macdonald is going to join us after 7:40 from here in Canterbury to describe how him and Tanya Whitford are tipping milking convention on its head. First up in the show, nearly 300,000 from the government has gone into research with Lincoln Agritech to utilise wool in biodegradable protective masks, and very timely, just as New Zealanders start to accept a mask-wearing future. But of course, globally around the world with COVID response, could wool be the answer? Dr. Rob Kelly, New Materials Group Manager, will join us next on Sarah's Country. This is Sarah's Country. Well, the move into lockdown level 3 in Auckland has, of course, brought about some timely research that has been granted $290,000 from the government and kickstarted an 18-month program. Lincoln Agritech has painted in some technology to utilise wool in wool masks. Joining us now is Rob Kelly from Lincoln Agritech. Now, Rob, can you tell us how long have Lincoln Agritech been working, particularly within the fibre benefits of wool, into other applications and now wool masks?
Sure, yes. So Lincoln Agritech and the new materials group at Lincoln Agritech has been focused on new uses for crossbred wool for more than 5 years, 6, 7 years. We've been working, supporting the wool research organisation of New Zealand and its strategic intent to develop new uses for crossbred wool, and so we've had a substantial program of research underway for several years now, and the opportunity to extend that into obviously the current needs of PPE masks presents an excellent opportunity to expand uses for wool.
Now, of course, wool fibre is virus neutralising in its properties, and of course $13.5 million on the table for the COVID Innovation Acceleration Fund announced in March was a great opportunity to take this forward. Whereabouts was the project prior to COVID?
Particularly relevant to the work that we're talking about here. So previous work that the Wool Research Organisation has funded and that we've developed has created ways of deconstructing wool fibres, so breaking them down into their fundamental components. And it's because of those fundamental components in a different physical format that those components have compared to the original wool fibre, that creates the opportunity. And that's a relatively new innovation. And the need identified to create PPE masks allows us to take that new innovation with these wool components and apply them into this application. So it's a relatively new development.
And of course, with a lot of work that Lincoln Agritech do, it's about commercialising the research. What are the partners that you've been working alongside, and how does that process sort of pan out?
So in this particular program where we're developing the wool-based PPE masks, then our role is to develop the technology to bring the materials together and establish that they work as we would like them to work, and they provide the benefits that we think they can. But we work very closely with manufacturing partners. So, for example, we're working with Christchurch-based company Fibertech, the Auckland-based company Larnaco, with the goal within the program being to establish the New Zealand-based manufacturing supply chain. And a key benefit here, a key thing that we're trying to achieve is as much independence as possible from the constraints of an international supply chain in the PPE area. Obviously, the world's demand for PPE is very significant, and that can restrict and can make New Zealand's ability to respond to those needs and the pandemic very, very difficult. So we work with local manufacturers with the goal of developing the materials and ultimately the process so that these masks will be able to be created locally, manufactured locally.
For those who are not familiar with the bacterial trapping filtration element of wool fibre, could you please explain why wool is so unique in comparison to the synthetic options?
So the wool's ability to bind and absorb moisture is very well known and maybe will feel quite familiar to people in terms of how wool can feel next to the skin and its hydration characteristics. And of course, any biological materials are carried on in vapor and in breath, for example. And so that ability to bind and absorb moisture and the things that it's carrying is really key to its performance here in relation to biological materials, in relation to viruses and bacteria. Wool has been well known to also filter particles very well, and the use of wool filters in particle filtration has been established for quite some time. But the particular benefits that wool has here, and the deconstructed wool components that we have, are about absorbing the moisture components and the things that they carry, as compared to synthetic materials, which are generally more moisture repelling and not so good at binding and holding on to those moisture components.
This air filtration market must be larger than just wool masks, Rob. There must be a lot of applications, particularly in areas of pollution around the world.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, our focus within this program is specifically in relation to the PPE masks and the needs that we have currently. But the ability of wool to absorb both polluting particles, as you would find in a polluted environment, but importantly, gaseous components of filtration. So the sort of gases that occur in a polluted city, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, and things of that nature. Wool is very potent at absorbing those materials, and the new formats that have been created as a result of the work that we've been undertaking into new uses, supported by RONs, creates lots of opportunities there. But very important to remember and key to this program is that the materials that we're creating are, of course, wool-based, and so they're sustainably derived. And in the PPE mask area, that's I think a very, very significant component, because the standard single-use surgical masks that we'll be familiar with now are, of course, all synthetic, either made from polypropylene or polyethylene fiber, maybe, synthetic fibers that are used in a single use and then disposed of, creating an environmental hazard. And so part of the goal of the development here is to have a sustainably locally derived alternative that obviously doesn't have the longer term environmental impact.
We're joined now by Dr. Rob Kelly, who is the new Materials Group Manager for Lincoln Agritech, and we're talking about the surge in not only funding but of course demand for wool masks at this time. Rob, I'd like to end by asking you, for strong wool growers out there that are watching this right now, can you give them, that light at the end of the tunnel, some excitement around the fibre that they are producing every day, that it does have a future?
Absolutely. The particular characteristics that wool has, its ability to interact with moisture, interact with the environment, provide a range of benefits that other materials are essentially not very good at doing. Those differentiating benefits are very strong for wool, and the work that we've been undertaking for some time and that RONS has been supporting for some time really provides some significant new product opportunities, which we're excited about, that will lead to future demand. And that's where we're really focusing on. And there's nothing as fantastic as New Zealand wool to really bring those benefit properties through.
Oh, absolutely. We all know that here at home in New Zealand, and it's time to push that through the value chain. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, as I said, Dr. Rob Kelly from Lincoln Agritech, and the great story that is on Farmers Weekly, research into using wool for masks in this week's Farmers Weekly. Now, coming up after the break, we're staying on the theme of the effects of lockdown. We're going to be joined by NZX dairy analyst with another hat on. She has many hats. That is the wonderful, bubbly Julia Jones. And she is a part of a group of concerned rural Waikato-based people about Auckland spirits. And this another opportunity for us to show our urban cousins how rural cares about them with the new release of a project called Kia Kaha Auckland. All that up next on Sarah's Country. This is Sarah's Country.
Every morning, Kiwi farmers wake up to produce high quality food. Yet every night, some Kiwi families are going to sleep hungry. Meet the Need is a charity founded by farmers, and it's here to change all that. We're about New Zealand farmers feeding New Zealand families by donating a small part of what we grow when we can. You can help us make sure no one in New Zealand goes to sleep hungry again. Visit meettheneed.org and follow us on social.
Well, you've certainly turned it on tonight, team. The comments have exploded, and I'm very, very proud of you. Of course, it's always about asking simple questions and you get simple answers, and great ones at that. Let me read through some of them. She is on the line. I want to tantalise her with the beautiful fruit that New Zealand produces. Melissa Wong's favourite are feijoas. Anthony says cherries from Central Otago, big time. Can't go past picking your own. Sarah has said avocado, fruit, question mark. Yes, it is a fruit, I believe. So is a tomato, but ask an American or a Brit, they probably wouldn't understand that. Kate Taylor, wild blackberry, we're not sprayed. Agree with your mum about the flavours of heirloom fruits and berries, a better flavour. And of course picked and eaten off the tree. And now we're also talking, leading into our next guest, around the support of our major city. I asked, do you think in rural New Zealand we're still in the dark ages of appreciating and caring about the biggest population in this country? And Anthony said the question should be asked, does Auckland realise how lucky they are to regional New Zealand? Tony Watson has said kia kaha, and I've asked for hashtag kia kaha in the comments below to those who are doing the sacrifice for the rest of us at the moment with level 3 lockdown. And I've got to finish on this lovely comment from Veronica. As I was sharing, one of my favourite places to hide out in Auckland was Cornwall Park, and Veronica agrees. So many good memories till I was 10. Daffodils, arches, picnics in the summer, wild rabbits. Might stop on that one, Veronica. Seeing people on rollerblades being towed behind cars. What health and safety? Tony Watson's watching, Veronica. Long walks, and of course the best, lambs in spring. Lambs in spring with daffodils in Cornwall Park is quite a sight. Now, wanting to let Auckland know that our community of 5 million cares about them, that they're not alone, that we're thinking of them, and we recognise and appreciate their sacrifice has been the brainchild of a new social media community launched today called Kia Kaha Auckland. If COVID-19 has taught us anything, it is that we have now, more than previous to the lockdown, the opportunity to create connections between rural and urban for our kids, mums, dads, whānau, schools, sports teams and communities. Joining us now to discuss is industry leader, NZX dairy analyst and all-round connector, Julia Jones. Julia, welcome to Sarah's Country. Now, our town and country lives are very different, but also mutually dependent upon each other. Why is it so important that Auckland City communities feel supported by us in rural New Zealand right now?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons for that. I mean, one of them, it's 1.6 million people, so it's a large portion of our population. Secondly, they're humans. You know, we need to show compassion and love and let them know that we are thinking of them. It's different when you're in a national lockdown because everyone's in the same position, but there's that sense at the moment that they're the ones who are I guess, creating a bit of sacrifice, and from the sacrifice, there will be a sense of uncertainty for some of those businesses up there that aren't going to know what it might look like once they're out of this stage of the lockdown.
Now, I received a press release from the wonderful team at Dairy Women's Network, one of the many groups that have come together collectively around this concept. How did you get involved, and can you tell us a bit more about the concept?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was just over the weekend. Lee Estridge sent an email out to a couple of us and just said, hey, look, how do we show Auckland that we're there for them? What can we do to support them? And, you know, you come up with heaps of ideas and we're like, let's do adopt a calf and all these things. And what we realise is there is an immediate need. So messaging for the immediate need now, but then there will be a greater need in the future. We don't know what that looks like yet, but we want to be part of the solution, and whether that be ensuring that there is food going into food banks into Auckland for support, whether businesses in the rural community are connecting with businesses in Auckland to try and show support, or whether it be, employment. We all know that it's the Grow New Zealand. There's a lot of employment in the rural regions, and so I guess that's the longer term thing, but the immediate action is to just show support, a little bit of compassion, and actually get some good messages, some positive thinking, and hopefully some laughs, because we all know our fabulous rural characters we've got out there, and that's what we want to see on the page.
Absolutely. And I was just thinking, from that page, I would like to then extend and showcase on Serious Country some wonderful video messaging, because that was something that touched me and would have touched the processing workers across the country, where farmers were sending those messages to those most affected to say thank you for what they were doing on our behalf. What type of messaging would you like to encourage rural New Zealand to get behind Kia Kaha Auckland's Facebook page?
Look, I mean, I think it's dads to dads, mums to mums, kids to kids, business owners to business owners. It's got to be a personal thing of what you feel, so make it authentic. But the key messaging is that thank you. You know, you eat our produce, you appreciate our produce, and we want to show you how much we appreciate you. And that we're all the same, really. You know, we live in different areas. Look, I work in Auckland and I live in the Waikato, so I get the great opportunity to kind of live in these two worlds. I love both. And I think it's just about bringing everyone together, connecting. At the end of the day, we're actually a really small country, and if we don't connect, we're just going to implode.
And of course, lockdown nationally showed us an increasing amount of connection to our food production systems, particularly with the ability that probably a lot of New Zealanders didn't realise we're a net exporter of food, and food security was something that we were very privileged to have in this country. How have you found it sort of developing over the last wee while as well? Is there something we can nurture and continue to nurture there?
Yeah, I mean, you know, when you're classified as an essential service, there is a great sense of pride of that. You know, so I think what it did highlight, though, that there are some supply chain issues. And I think, you know, I've seen a lot of social media around making sure that our greengrocers or our fresh market vegetable places can stay open. And it's not just supermarkets that we're actually getting food through. I'm on Meet the Need board, and I feel really privileged to be part of that. So making sure that, and we'd love more donations. I'm going to use this as a wee dirty pitch, but we need more donations out of the North Island so we can make sure we're supporting our North Island food banks as well and giving consistent supply. So yeah, I mean, I think that essential service thing was so important for Pride. What we've got to continue to do, though, is make sure we do all the right things in our businesses and acknowledge that there are businesses in Auckland that will be shut down and will never start again. And we're fortunate that we're not in that position.
Yeah, just touching on that, and we'll be joined by Richard Rennie from Global HQ to continue on around some of the food wastage and security supply chain situations, particularly more in horticulture and vegetables. But the public sentiment appears less supportive this time round of butchers being remained closed, and as you see, greengrocers. Are we starting to get our head around the animal welfare situation that has a flow-on effect from lockdown, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably what we've started to do is get a little bit more, and I mean this with love, is a bit more logical and into how we see food. I think also we've got some really good reports that are coming out that are practical, that are saying it's not about plants and it's not just about animals, it's actually about having a balanced diet. Somewhat, you know, most of our grandmothers could have potentially written that report, but, you know, it took science to do it. So I think in that sense, our relationship with food has shifted. You know, it's we are actually omnivores. We are actually set up to eat both meat and veg. And I think that meat, when you can't access it and you can't get that protein that you require, that's actually quite scary. You know, there were those moments where it was a little bit spooky. You go online to do your shopping and it's 3 weeks out, or you can't even get a spot to get into it. Or you get to the supermarket and there was no meat there, all the mince was gone. So I think there was a sense of greater appreciation for that nutrition.
Mm-hmm. And of course, touching on Meet the Need, can you please make it very specifically clear to those listening on demand later or right now how they can donate? Because the likes of Joel Rock, he's a very good model citizen. He said last night he would donate $10 million of his lotto winnings to Meet the Need. That was his chosen charity. Should he have had livestock? And I said, Joel, you don't need to. So how can people get involved?
So you can do it on our website. So it's meettheneed.org.nz, or it might just be .org. That's terrible, isn't it? I should have known exactly what that is. And so you can either donate a virtual beast, you can donate dollars, or as a farmer, you can donate a beast. And I think the most important thing to point out is what people are getting is export quality mince that is going into our food bank. So we're giving the best quality food. It's not about the waste food. It's not about what's left over. It's actually high quality. So you can go on our website and donate money, or you can donate a beast through if you're doing any culling through Silver Fern Farms. So there's lots of different ways you can support us.
And of course, the reason why we have Julia Jones on the show tonight on Sarah's Country is, of course, the Kia Kaha Auckland Facebook page. So over the next week, Julia, just to reiterate again some of the messages, it might even be a simple photo to post to that page to say, we're thinking of you.
Yeah, and look, and also connecting with Auckland people. What I'm scared about is sometimes in rural, we get really good at talking to other rural people, and then we get frustrated that no one else got the message. We can't just be great at talking to each other. We've got to get this message out into Auckland. So share it with your friends on Facebook, your Auckland friends. I know you'll all at least have one, and just get it out there and get the messages on there. Keep them coming. We can't have too many messages, and if you're a bit shy, a wee photo is of a gorgeous lamb or a gorgeous calf or whatever is going to be more than enough. Or your beautiful family.
Oh, I just need to read out a couple of comments here. Tony has said, great work, JJ and team. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And Christy has said, well said, reconnecting, Julia. Auckland needs the regions and the regions need Auckland.
Yeah, I
cool.
think we can't kind of try and divide it. I think it's important that we actually just stick together on all this.
Hey, and I'm not going to let you get away. I tantalised you with all that beautiful fruit talk. What's your favourite?
Oh, I do love a feijoa and absolutely wild blackberries. We used to pick them. I lived in Ross on the West Coast, and we used to pick them. They were all down the sides of the roads.
I was actually just going to ask you if they were spray-free, but on the sides of the roads?
I don't know. I mean, clearly it didn't impact me at all. I mean, maybe it did. Maybe that's the reason.
Oh, absolutely. I totally understand what you mean, especially on the West Coast, picking them with my mother. It's a great time. Thank you so much, Julia, as always, for everything that you do for this country and our industry. Now, coming up on Sarah's Country, Zespri today has announced another record year. Over the past decade, horticulture exports have doubled in present-day value. But with high air freight globally for our exports and labour shortages, how is this recent lockdown affecting fruit and vegetables, both domestically supplying into Auckland and beyond our borders? To cover a range of topics in the horticultural sector, I've asked to join us next on Sarah's Country the very knowledgeable Global HQ agri-journalist Richard Rennie. This is Sarah's Country.
Really pleased we got into this. Thanks for your help, Dave.
It's a good idea, honey. Do you reckon it'll come out? Cover it and tell compound to leave it 10 minutes. You'll be fine. Good call, Dave.
Good call on getting those security cameras, Dave.
You call a new one yet?
Yeah, kind of.
When you've got decisions to make, we'll be there to help you make the right call.
I'd go for those ones, Bob. Yeah, good call.
Did you choose these?
Oh, you know.
For great advice and insurance, talk to FMG.
The recipe for perfect beef and lamb. Take one small fresh country. Make sure it's nice and remote. Now, keep it at the ideal temperature all year round. Next, mix in the farmers. They go perfectly with the nature of this unique place. Add regular sprinkles of rain to really bring out the lush meadow grass. Then let your animals happily graze on this grass, all day, every day. And there you have it, New Zealand, the perfect recipe for beef and lamb. pure nature.
Welcome back to Sarah's Country. Now, of course, the topic tonight with our audience is, what is your favourite fruit that New Zealand produces? I'd love to hear wherever you're watching or listening live in the comments below so I can share them, and we've had some great ones so far. Particularly name the variety. And of course, as we just heard there from Julia Jones, send your support to Auckland, because you know what? We will weather together as an entire country of 5 million people. Now, horticulture produce has doubled in export value over the past decade to $6.2 billion, fast becoming a rock star of the primary sector, chasing sheep and beef at $9 billion. Now, how are threats to this booming sector with the implications of COVID-19 lockdowns both here currently in Auckland markets and continuing to affect our markets around the world? Joining us now to discuss a multitude of different topics that explode across the horticultural sector is Richard Rennie from Global HQ. Good evening, Richard. Now, could you give us a bit of an update? Firstly, hot off the press, Zespri's results, another record.
Yeah, the records seem to keep tumbling at Zespri, don't they? I see they're just out this afternoon with a total turnover figure up 7% to 3.3 billion on last year. And a profit increase of around about 10% to $200 million. If you're a grower, what does that mean? If you're a green grower, you're going to average a $67,000 a hectare return, and if you're a lucky gold grower, it's another $100,000 on top of that at about $165,000 a hectare. So, yeah, some big dollars in there. You do pay to get access to that gold fruit, of course, but the returns are certainly coming back to the growers, yeah.
And whereabouts are we seeing that biggest growth? Is it particularly China?
It is China, Sarah, but not only. The top three markets are now China, Japan, and interestingly, Spain. The Spanish have gone nuts for Zespri kiwi fruit in the last 3 years, particularly on the back of COVID, with a view of it being a fruit that's high in vitamin C. It's good for you. It's got its own skin wrapped around it, so it's safe to eat once you peel it. And yeah, it's now, those are the top three markets, but also being chased quite strongly with growth in the USA and also South Korea since the tariffs were lifted about 5 years ago. Growth there now has been increasing year on year as well. Yeah.
And particularly the other favourite is, of course, our avocados. How are they sort of faring, and the wider vegetable produce range?
Yeah, it seems that avocados are sort of almost like if Zespri's the poster, then maybe avocados are the postcard. They're certainly not far behind kiwi fruit in terms of the level of growth they've been experiencing. Massive expansions in the Northland region, and with it, this is the second year just coming up, I think. Yeah, second year for getting access into the China market. It was a bit of a first for New Zealand to get in there. Fruit there that I saw there last year was on the shelf for the first time, viewed as more expensive, but also a higher quality fruit than would have been offered up till then. And interestingly, efforts to try and get into the Indian market as well, which is something, yeah, quite new for almost any New Zealand food company. And a lot of opportunity being seen there as well. Yeah.
In Farmers Weekly this week, Neil Wallace covered off around the challenges affecting the fresh produce, and particularly with air freight costs rising really high. Are we sort of at threat to this great growth from the effects of COVID globally?
Yeah, the government did put in quite quickly too, back in March, put in a program to maintain air freight. Around about 100,000 tonnes a year of produce is freighted on via air freight, which is a surprisingly larger amount than I might have thought. A lot of it comes back to your higher value products, particularly cherries are a big one, air freighted to the likes of Taiwan and South Korea over season. And there are questions this year about how that's going to go. So far, it seems the link's been maintained, but we are at sort of a bit of a low point of season. Obviously, we're not harvesting cherries yet. But I think we seem to have done pretty well up till now. And I just from people spoken to, I don't get a sense that there's too much panic there about it. We seem to be getting good at navigating our way around these obstacles as they present themselves. So, yeah, cautiously optimistic, I think would be a good description.
Nimble Kiwis that we are. Now, of course, here at home, we're experiencing level 3 lockdown in our Auckland market for fruit and vegetables, and particularly the pukekohe being right on that boundary. And you're ringing around today. How are they getting on with these border closures?
Yeah, it seems in the first national lockdown, the big issue was a lot of produce growers suddenly lost their markets overnight, whether it was restaurants and cafes not buying, lettuces for paninis or whatever. And there was a level of waste, or a fair bit did go to charity as well. This time around, just talking to the president of the Pukekohe Veggie Growers today, she seemed to feel the bigger problem is this really unusual situation, which you're going to get when you start splitting the country into regions, where Waikato's on one side of the road and literally Auckland's on the other. And if you're a produce grower, it's quite likely you're going to have a foot in both regions. But that's making business very difficult for those growers up there, to the point where one grower said, look, if I get a puncture on my tractor on the Waikato side of my operation, I have to go south, 100 k's south to get someone to come and fix it, because I can't get someone to come from Auckland almost literally across the road. So, or it will take a long time to negotiate access for them to come and do it. So, yeah, there's some really funny little operational issues coming up there. Well, not a little. Truck drivers, most of your produce warehouses are sitting on the Auckland side of the region, but the growing area is in the Waikato side, and trucks having to try and cross between regions is quite problematic when you've got to go through checkpoints to do it. Yeah, so that's proven to be a big one for them. Yeah.
So, of course, hopefully this will be the end of level 3, fingers crossed, and that it should be around by next Friday. What about the flow-on effect, though, that we are experiencing in multitude parts of the industry, which is labour? Of course, we've come on the other side of harvest now, but what is it looking like going into the spring and summer so far?
Yeah, labour's a really funny one. We've still got, estimates are, we've still got about 8,000 of the 12,500 RSE workers still in New Zealand. A large number of them have been repatriated back to the Pacific Islands on special flights. A number of them are choosing to stay in New Zealand because they've got one eye on the view that they want to be able to stay and continue to work if possible. Meantime, at the same time, for next season, the industry is expecting to get 16,500 RSE workers. So there's quite a gap there that nobody really knows whether we're going to be able to fill. I would say, if trying to be optimistic on other things, but I think it's going to be a big ask to try and get that number of workers back into New Zealand for the sort of summer harvest season. Maybe the upside, well, it's sort of trying to look for the silver lining, is maybe the Kiwis that get displaced, perhaps there will be a pool of labour there locally that can do the job that RSE workers would do. But keeping in mind that a lot of those workers are really quite skilled, they've been coming back regularly for a number of years, and they're going to be hard to replace, even if we do replace them with Kiwis, given the level of skill that we're going to be missing in their absence. Yeah.
So a game of two halves, one celebrating record exports, but the headwinds are still very real, Richard.
Yeah, very much. And the labour market particularly is in a real state of flux where the government has made a number of concessions to the industry. It's let visas run longer. It's for backpackers and holiday workers as well. And there's a petition out for them, being put out by them to run it even longer if possible. But yeah, it's sort of going to be wait and see till probably October, November, post-election, I'd say. Yeah, very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Richard. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight on Sarah's Country. Richard Rennie is one of the many very experienced agri-journalists that are a part of the fold at Farmers Weekly, and of course the larger Global HQ team. Now, coming up to close on Sarah's Country is one of Richard Rennie's stories, actually, following through on the series of 3 B.linc Innovation winners that has just recently taken place, finding great innovation over lockdown. Here from Canterbury, tipping milking convention on its head is Ian Macdonald, joining us after the break. This is Sarah's Country.
Growing a better world takes courage. It takes foresight and vision. It's about dreaming big, then being brave enough to follow that dream through. To create a world where food is plentiful, soils are healthy, and rivers run crystal clear. A world where we grow more with less, where livestock is tended to with care. Energy is friend, not foe, and waste is a valuable resource. This is the world you're already shaping through imagination, innovation, and determination. So as small steps become huge leaps, you move boldly forward. And Rabobank is there beside you to help grow a better world together.
Now, of course, the macroeconomic impacts of COVID-19 have been felt significantly here in New Zealand. So the purpose of an awards was to acknowledge the new ways of thinking, the innovative working solutions and successes during the lockdown period, behind the farm gate right through to student innovation. It was a partnership between B.linc and Innovation here on Lincoln University campus and Farmers Weekly. And of course, there were 3 winners that came out. You will remember the girls from St Paul's Collegiate last week, and we have other winners next week we will showcase. But tonight, trying to run a small-scale farm economically on the edge of Christchurch and the creep of high-value lifestyle blocks was the challenge set aside for our last guest here tonight on Sarah's Country. Even greater was that embarking on running a commercial sheep milking operation. Ian Macdonald and Tanya Whitford have done just that, and their highly innovative approach to dealing with these challenges is what saw them take out this award. Now, joining us now to celebrate success is Ian. Good evening, sir, and congratulations on behalf of our audience.
Oh, thanks very much, Sarah. Humble, really. Just great, awesome. Yeah.
So, of course, we need to understand what is this innovation that you've brought to the paddock, and particularly with your sheep milking property that you've got here locally.
It's just quite simply a mobile harvest system, built to the code. Pretty strict code in New Zealand.
And so tell us more about your sheep milking operation. How many sheep are you running? How long have you been doing it? And sort of what was that time when you thought, hang on a minute, I can do things differently?
Yeah, so this is our 4th year of supply, and we supply 6 cheese factory across Canterbury and Otago, and we do that in conjunction with our sheep milk supply group, which involves 2 other Canterbury families. And we started designing, I guess, a milk sheep about 12 years ago with the help of Brian Boyke with the Nordoff operation up in Motueka. And luckily he had some inline recording systems where we could get data back to help us number crunch the sheep that were performing and move forward. But yeah, it's been a 12-year journey so far, 4 years of actual production. Yeah. 4.5 years of mobile milk plant development.
And certainly, I understand from Richard Rennie's article now on Farmers Weekly that tipping convention on its head is something that's not a breach of your character, and you've been doing this in the genetics game in the sheep world for some time.
Yeah, I'm not going to bore you with my background, but yeah, we're just quite happy to take parts of different, genetics out of different breeds, and you can call it hybrid or whatever you want. But we like that effect, and yeah, we just try and take the best parts and try and make something that works. We like to call it the Land Cruiser sheep rather than the Ferrari.
Gets the job done.
Gets the job done. That's right. Yeah. Fit for purpose, I think is the word, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So tell us how you've gone from proof of concept and the engineering challenges that you've experienced to get to the innovation that you've overcome and got to.
Well, as I said, 4.5 years of problem solving. So we started off with a small 8-bale plant just as the proof of concept, just to make sure that the idea had some merit. And then when we saw that it had merit, we stepped forward and built a 16-bale plant. And then we put that through a rather rigorous 18-month MPI validation process. And yeah, we passed with flying colours. So it's not all us, of course. We're lucky. We've got a wonderful group of engineers right here in Rangiora called Reed Milking Systems. And we were lucky enough to get the help of University of Canterbury Engineering School and a master's student called Thomas Fruin there. And he was just wonderful and just made our job a lot easier.
What's it mean for your business? Efficiencies, animal welfare, labour, etc.
Oh, for our business, it's the logical thing for us from a business point of view is that if we invested 250 to 500k in a bricks and mortar plant here, the next person that buys this property will have no respect for that. They'll put a bulldozer through it, I'm sure. And we're in a high value property area, and we just wanted something that was mobile, a mobile asset, something we could move. We just didn't think anyone else coming into this area would put value on a 22 hectare farm that's probably going to be split up into lifestyle blocks. So we've built something that we can take forward. This is a unit that can do 220 sheep an hour, and quite possibly in the right farm could be run all day. So 1,200 sheep a day once a day is a possibility.
Okay, so I'm just thinking about the lifestyle blocks that surround Lincoln here. What about going out contracting on lifestyle properties? It's a real possibility. People are looking for off-farm investment.
Yeah, not impossible. You mean in a contract type situation, I guess, Sarah, but tricky to fit the code because of all the different farms you're going on. I didn't build it with that in mind, that's for sure. I wouldn't do that myself. The key for me is really, as I said, there was no point in building on this place, and it's a saleable asset.
So therefore, you have just taken my last question. As people interested, they'll be looking forward to being able to purchase this. Commercialising it is not an option for you, but potentially going forward, this could be a very much a part of the sheep milking future of New Zealand.
Yeah, people can make that decision themselves, Sarah. That's not for me to decide. For us, it's just a small part of a big jigsaw puzzle. For us, we're food producers, we're farmers, trying to make a wholesome product, and we're lucky to be able to be working with sheep milk and some good people in the industry. I mean, the milking plant is just part of that jigsaw. People are interested in a plant, I'd go and see Rennie Engineering, not me. If they need help with the code of practice or the risk management plan, I'm quite happy to help with that.
Fantastic. And of course, that is very much about what the B.linc Innovation Celebrating Success Awards was all about, those particular innovations that we're seeing behind the farm gate that are, of course, inspiring us going forward. And before you leave us, Ian, we're talking about fruit, a bit of a pivot from sheep milk. But of course, every Kiwi loves a good piece of Kiwi fruit. Yes. Fruit that's Kiwi, not specifically Kiwi fruit. What is your favourite fruit, Ian?
My favourite, pretty hard to beat, a really good New Zealand apple, it's good New Zealand apples are beautiful.
Something that we are still very passionate and proud of, the good apple and pear industry across New Zealand. Thank you so much for joining us, Ian Macdonald there. Now, that's all we've got time for tonight on Sarah's Country. I do have a few more comments to get to down here. Melissa has said blueberries, absolutely. And Hannah has said you can't go past the Satsuma mandarin, yum. Of course, as climate change changes our microclimates across different regions in New Zealand, we're going to see fruit growing in different parts and different varieties. It's going to be an interesting next 10 to 20 years in that space for sure. But of course, as Richard Rennie pointed out there, the doubling of exports in the last decade in terms of value in horticulture sees that we are on the right trajectory, and this is despite the COVID environment. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us in the comments wherever you've been watching live. And if you're listening to this back on demand on podcast, thank you so much, and make sure you subscribe to Sarah's Country wherever you like to consume your podcasts. Of course, all of the latest stories on farmersweekly.co.nz, and feel free to send me an email, sarah@puriummedia.com, with any of your guest suggestions and of course topics and ideas, or even just some straight out feedback, or of course your situation and what you're experiencing at the moment farming food and fibre across this country. We'll be back again tomorrow night from 7 o'clock. Until then, good night and go well. This is Sarah's Country.